Hey YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are talking about what I think about student loan debt. Student loan debt, American student loan debt, is a really touchy topic because nobody likes feeling like they are stupid. But I don't think that most people that are in a lot of student loan debt and have to pay back a lot of student loan debt are stupid. I think that they were insanely unlucky, just like I see myself as being insanely lucky to have not had to take out any student loans and to not have any student debt. I started this channel because I wanted to, share my story. And one piece of my story that I really wanted other people to know was my story about studying abroad, and not a semester abroad to have fun and to party, but I did my whole Bachelor of Science in Economics and Management, or Economics and Business Administration, in Italy. And the main reason I did this was because I don't even actually know the main reason I did this, which is the crux of this whole student loan debt problem. It's the fact that we at 18 years old have to make a huge decision in our lives. And when I first applied to school in Italy, I wasn't seriously even considering it. I didn't know what was gonna happen in my future, but I knew that I didn't wanna be poor. Whenever somebody would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, as a kid, although my answer fluctuated, like at one point I wanted to be president, at one point I wanted to be a lawyer, then I wanted to be a tax attorney. The common denominator in all of these things that I wanted to be when I grew up was I didn't want to be poor. Given that I knew that my family was poor and they weren't going to be able to help me in the traditional ways that families usually help their kids, I knew that I had to work harder than everybody else. I knew that I had to get perfect grades so that I could get scholarships and I could go to a really good school and graduate affordably so I could get a good job and, not be poor anymore. So when I was applying to schools, I'll tell you the schools I applied to. I applied to Columbia, I applied to Fordham, I applied to Connecticut College, I applied to UConn, which is University of Connecticut, I applied to UHart, which is University of Hartford, and I applied to NYU. And I applied to 10 schools in total, but I'm not remembering the other 3 that I applied to that weren't Bocconi. So just to give you an idea, what's the common denominator with all these schools? They are all, except for UConn, private schools, and they all had an insane price tag on them. But I wasn't thinking about that because in my mind, that didn't matter. I was told, first of all, from my family, I was always told that, you're really smart, you get amazing grades, so don't worry about anything. You're going to get scholarships and you're going to go to school for free. That's what my family always told me. Then as it got time to apply to schools and we get closer to, having to actually go to school, my guidance counselor and my teachers were all like, well, you're not going to go to school for free because nobody really goes to school for free, which is the truth in America, but you're going to be able to get some scholarships and the rest are going to go in loans. And it's completely normal. Everybody takes out loans. Your parents didn't pay for school out of pocket, which is true. Both of my parents had small loans to go to school when they went to university. And you just get told that it's normal. You're going to pay it all off. And you, as an 18-year-old, of course, you trust the advice of your guidance counselors and your teachers and your parents that are all telling you, don't worry, just do what you have to do. It's what you do. So at 18 years old, you make this choice. And I had already started off wrong in applying to those schools because I wasn't gonna be able to pay for those schools. Literally, I got into every school that I applied to except Columbia. And once I got into all of them, my first choice was NYU. I was like, I have to go to NYU. NYU is the only school on this list that is good enough for me. I have to go to NYU. I didn't even community college was not even crossing my mind. The State School of University of Connecticut, which is a really good school. The University of Connecticut on the national level is a great public school, but I thought that wasn't good enough for me. I needed to go big and I needed to go hard, and it didn't matter that school literally cost $60,000 a year. The acceptance letters were coming in, and along with the acceptance letters come the bill. And so the first ones that came in was University of Hartford, which is a private school in Connecticut. And University of Hartford gave me they always give you these huge packets that say what scholarships you got and congratulations, you got this merit scholarship for $50,000. But you guys, despite all of the scholarships that I got, which I did get a lot of scholarships, I think I got over $100,000 worth of scholarship if you group them all together. None of them covered the full price of any of these universities. University of Hartford would have come out with me having to pay $12,000 a year out of pocket. Pace wasn't one school that I got into. They had me, I think I wouldn't have had to pay anything out of pocket, but I would have been taking out $20,000 worth of loans a year. Then schools like NYU, I didn't get anything from NYU, and I'm going to tell you why. When you apply to colleges in America, you also have to apply for, financial aid. And there are actually two main financial aid agencies. One is FAFSA, which is the government's financial aid program, which everybody applies to, and it's free. And then there's the CSS. It was called CSS or something, which is another thing that private schools make you apply to get financial aid. And it was not free. It was $90 to apply for each school. And I was me back then already, I was starting to see things weren't making sense. Things weren't adding up. Why do I even have to think about this? Everybody said I was going to I don't understand why I'm seeing these bills that are saying that I'm going to have to pay $12,000 a year to go to school when everybody said I'd be fine because I did everything right up until now. I did everything that everybody told me to do. I was the perfect student. So what the hell? So the CSS profile, I decided that I wasn't going to do it at all because I said, this is insane. Ideologically, this is insane that you are asking me, a poor person, to pay now to apply for financial aid. No. It just isn't, it doesn't make sense to me. So I think Connecticut College, NYU, maybe even Columbia were all schools that required the CSS profile to apply for financial aid and scholarships through them. And I said no, because ideologically to me, it just didn't make sense and I didn't like it. And I said, you know what, I'm still going to get money from them because I'm actually poor. I had the grades to get in. So they're going to come up with some way to, meet me halfway because I did everything else, but I'm sorry, but I'm not paying to apply for financial aid. Well, boy, was I wrong. They don't give a damn. If you don't pay the $90 that you might not even have to apply for that financial aid, they're not considering you for anything. So even though I got into NYU, and even though it was my top choice, since I didn't do that CSS profile, it was going to be $60,000 a year for me, more or less, to attend that school. Once I started getting the acceptance letters and I started seeing the realities of how much I had to pay, that's when that crazy thing I did I applied to Bocconi on a whim. I applied to school in Italy just to say, I went there once. It would be cool to study over there. Let's just throw it into the water. Let's just throw this pebble into the sea and see what happens. Randomly speaking, I got in, and then months later, I wouldn't even know it, but months later, I found in my junk mail, a day before it expired, a full tuition scholarship to go to Bocconi. So all of this, I started this out by saying that I was very lucky, right? So yeah, this was all very lucky. I was lucky in the fact that my school even offered Italian to study, and that Italian program would have allowed me to spend 2 weeks in Italy, and I would have had such an amazing time those 2 weeks. I never heard anything about migrants or youth unemployment or taxes. I didn't see any of the negative in my 2 weeks that I spent here in Italy. And so that made me think, okay, let me apply to this school and let me apply to that scholarship. But it was really luck and fate, I guess, kind of guiding me, because looking back on it, there's no logical reason as to why I did that, honestly, because I wasn't even looking at it as, okay, this school costs less. I was just let's see what happens. And I was lucky that I saw what happens, because as I'm getting all these bills, $10,000 a year, $12,000 a year, take this loan, take that loan, I realized, well, maybe it wouldn't be so bad to go to that school, because if I had to pay out of pocket, given my income, I wouldn't pay the full amount. I'd be paying $6,000 a year, and I could work and I could do that. And then when I got the scholarship, it became more and more evident that that's what I should have done. So I went to Bocconi. I didn't pay any money to go to Bocconi, aside from books and stuff. I had the scholarship for my tuition at Bocconi, and I did get a $20,000 scholarship from the Martin Luther King Foundation in my town, which ended up going towards covering my living expenses, my room and board. So most of my immediate costs were covered by scholarships, and then all the rest of my expenses, I just worked to cover them. To buy food, to travel, to do anything fun. I was working as an English teacher, an English tutor, as you guys know, all throughout university to just have some money on the side and to save. And in the end, this would have ended up being the most important decision I ever made in my life, because I didn't realize how much of an advantage not graduating with student loan debt would be. The biggest difference that people don't understand when they take out student loans, when people take out credit in general, credit is a huge problem in general in America. When people are taking out that credit and spending that credit, they think of it like, okay, I'm borrowing this $5 from the bank and I'll pay it back later. But what they really don't realize is they're not going to borrow that $5 from the bank and pay it back later, but they're going to borrow that $5 back from the bank and pay it back later with interest. And what is interest? People don't realize the real pesantezza of interest and interest rates, you guys. A lot of student loans will have interest rates of like 6, 7, 8%. So what does that mean? It means that $30,000 loan you have every year is going up by at least 8% more. In addition to that principal of $60,000 that you're going to pay them, you also, I said 60, of that $30,000 that you have to pay them, you're also going to pay them plus 8% of 30, which is compounded. Now, I don't know the interest rate, the compound interest rate equation off the top of my head, but I know the concept. And the concept is you're not paying back $30,000, but you're paying $30,000 plus interest. And the way that interest compounds in a year is crazy. I don't know how, but I fell down the rabbit hole the other day of the student debt crisis in America. And I was just listening to stories of people that have to pay like $600 a month, $900 a month for student loans. And I just can't even imagine, because that's money that literally your degree wasn't worth that. People get these degrees to go into school and to come out and make like $30,000, $40,000 a year. The median household income in America is something like $57,000, $56,000. It went up a little bit in the past 10 years, but the average millennial household income is usually somewhere around $30,000, $40,000 a year. So you paid $120,000 to get a degree that's going to find you a job that pays you $40,000 a year, when you have this loan that is increasing every year, every month because of interest. It just doesn't make any sense. And I say that, I come back to my same thing of saying, like, it's really unfortunate that we as 18-year-olds and our parents, who didn't have to go through this when they were younger, weren't financially literate enough to know what kind of decision they were putting themselves into. Because when you put all the numbers out there, it's actually insanity, and it makes you wonder why people would even do that. And we do that because, like I said, the people making these decisions are not in the position to make these decisions. It's insane. My generation, I actually don't really know what generation I'm in, because looking at the new data, apparently I might not even be a millennial. I was born in like the last year of being a millennial, and I might even be a little bit of Generation X, a very early Gen X, Gen Zer, which is scary. The millennial generation is lost. The millennial generation kind of was the unlucky generation to not understand the impact of what they were doing. But I think that thankfully the Generation Z can look at the mistakes of the millennials. They can look at the sob stories, and they can also look at the success stories like mine and be a little bit smarter when they're, deciding where to go to school, where to further their education, how to further their education. Really, the Generation Z, if you're poor, I'm sorry, but you don't have as many options as your wealthy counterparts. I'm sorry, but America's a scam, and it doesn't matter if you did everything you were supposed to do, or if you're the smartest and if you're the most brilliant. Most of you smart, brilliant people aren't going to be able to get into a school that you deserve at a price that is reasonable for you if you're poor. And so you have to be more creative, whether that means going to a community college for the first 3 years and transferring out, or doing what I did, studying abroad. I think people need to take this seriously. Like, when I first came here, people would have said, no, but that's too extreme. How can you study abroad? You don't know the language. You don't know the culture. You don't have your family. And how can you be so far away from your family? I think that when you're poor, you do what you have to do. People are always asking me how I was able to work while I was studying, how I was able to save up as much as I saved, how I was able to do everything I do. And honestly, for me, it wasn't difficult because at the end of the day, you do what you have to do. I didn't have a choice. Like, I had to be very frugal and count every single penny because my parents weren't paying my rent. They aren't paying my rent. I'm paying my rent. And when you have to do something, it puts a lot of things into perspective. And I guess that was the real guiding principle behind everything. I knew that my parents weren't going to co-sign my loans. I knew that my parents weren't going to be able to help me with the cost of college. And so I was a little bit more attentive when it came to the final decision of where I was going to go to school and how I was going to fund that. And I have to say it was the best decision I've ever made. As of right now, I have more saved up in my bank account than like the average American family. And I've been able to do this in 5 years. I have a decent job. I have multiple streams of income. Like, I'm in a pretty good position as a person. And it's because I gave myself a huge advantage by not indebting myself. People that indebted themselves to study are putting themselves at a huge disadvantage in life. And I feel like I would be irresponsible if I didn't have at least one video where I really, really, really outlined that and I really, really, really pushed that home. Is university worth it in America? It honestly depends. Like, first of all, it depends on how much money you're gonna have to take out. Like, if you're taking out $10,000, maybe even $20,000 worth of loans, it could make sense, because then when you have that degree and you find that job that maybe isn't amazing, maybe it's only paying $25,000 a year or $30,000 a year. If you live frugally that 1 year after college, you can pay that all back. You can pay that all off, and then you have a clean slate. You can start your life. You can start saving. And once you have some savings, not only will you have financial security, but you'll also have the flexibility to start investing so that your money can make money for you. And by the time that you are 10 years from now, you'll have a little extra money to be able to buy a house. You'll have a little extra money to be able to make financial moves in your life that's going to generate generational wealth that you can pass down to your children, which unfortunately is something that so many people in the minority communities don't understand. Like, this whole put yourself in debt for $100,000 to go to school and to get a degree makes 0.00 sense, especially when the careers that you need those degrees for are disappearing. And the careers that are the careers of the future, a lot of the times you don't need a degree to do that. You don't need a higher level degree to do that. Of course, the jobs will probably ask for somebody with at least a bachelor's degree, but honestly speaking, the things that I learned in college weren't really that helpful to what I'm doing right now as a career. Honestly, YouTube and the work that I've done outside of university has been more helpful to me to understand what I'm doing as a career. The most beneficial thing that I learned in college that is relevant to my career is how to use Excel. So a lot of the times, at least a bachelor's degree will help you get your foot in the door, but it's not always necessary. And so are you really gonna put yourself in debt for the rest of your life because student loans follow you until you die in America? Are you really going to indebt yourself that much for something that's not even necessary? When you really sit down and think about it, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And so I'm a huge advocate for studying abroad, especially if you are a lower income person in America, because that could change your life. That could really change your life. In 5 years, the amount of things that I've been able to do over here in Italy are insane. I know other Americans, I have friends that were Americans that studied at my same school and they went back home and now they're having amazing, successful lives back home in America. Like, this is the future. This is the way people need to be thinking. People need to be thinking outside of the box and stop doing what the majority of people are doing around them, because the majority of the people are screwed. The student loan crisis is, I just can't believe it. It's such an unfortunate situation, but we've seen it play out so many times in American history where, you know, banks and corporations take advantage of poor people because they don't know anything. This is what I meant when I said I wish they taught economics in school like they teach math, because the way you come out after studying something like finance or business or economics and understanding and having financial literacy really changes your life, because then you see that you don't even have to make $1 million a year to set yourself up well and become wealthy in a decent amount of time. But they don't teach people how to save money. They don't teach people how to use money to make money. They don't teach people any of these things. And so they get put into traps. It's the same trap that people got into during the housing bubble when banks and corporations were giving loans to people to buy houses that they knew they couldn't afford. And what happened? The bubble crashed, the market crashed, and rich people weren't the ones that felt the brunt of that. It was the middle class and the poor people that felt the brunt of the crisis. And that's why politicians and corporations aren't doing anything about this student loan bubble. They don't give a damn, because when the bubble bursts and the market crashes again because of this, they're not going to be affected. The stocks will go down, but they've hedged their risks and invested in other kinds of securities and stocks and bonds. So their losses are already going to be minimized. And then in 10 years, when the market is up again, they're going to be even richer. It's the people that don't have any savings, the people that don't have any financial security because they're paying $600, $900 a month in student loan debt, that are going to be screwed. And I feel like the only way to solve this issue is to teach the next generation financial literacy and how to make wise financial decisions so that they can be productive human beings. Because at the end of the day, even if, for example, right now we're having this huge wave of socialist thinking in America, which makes sense. Given the way things are, of course, people are going to want something completely different and revolutionary to change the system. But I don't think that socialism is the answer for us. I feel like when I was in high school, I was a very, very socialist thinker. I was all for high taxes, government programs, and blah, blah, blah. And then I moved to Italy, which is a much more socialist country than America. And I saw where socialism works and where it doesn't work. I saw how people are disincentivized to do well and start companies and, you know, not be mediocre, because not being mediocre means paying 60% of your income in taxes. And I mean, maybe that sounds selfish, but I don't understand why I have to work 3 times as hard to make 3 times the amount of money, and then after taxes, I made the same amount as somebody that just worked normally. There's zero incentive in Italy to do more. And I think that's one of America's competitive advantages, the fact that people are so incentivized, the fact that Americans are so driven. Americans want to always improve their lot. They're never just, they don't settle. So I don't really think that going 100% socialist is the way to do it, but I feel like you have to start from the root of the problem. I'm always talking about the root of the problem. The root of this particular problem is financial literacy. They have this saying, it's like, give a man a fish and he'll survive a day. But if you teach a man to fish, he'll survive his whole life. Even if these socialist ideas that are springing up in America right now about wealth redistribution, taxing the shit out of the super rich, and somehow giving that money back to the poor, in the long run, it's not going to change anything, because those same poor people that already have it ingrained in their mind that it's okay to spend more than they have, that it's okay to use debt to finance every aspect of their life, even when they get the money, they get that $1 million from the government, they're just gonna spend $1,000,001 so they can, up their level. They can level up and they can keep moving higher. And you're gonna have the same problem, because so long as people are financially illiterate, these financial issues will never stop. So that was just my long rant on this crazy, crazy, crazy situation in America surrounding student debt. Leave your comments down below on what you think. I'd love to start a conversation on this topic. It's super interesting and it's super relevant. And I hope that I made you guys think, especially the younger people that follow me. I hope that you guys are a bit aware of what's going on around you in America. And I hope that you know that my path is an option for you as well. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Mwah.